Alright folks, so today we're going to take a little look at Vulfpeck's 1612. This is a super fun one to play, but it's a little bit tricky, right? But it demonstrates the idea of arranging this type of music for guitar really, really well, because it's got three like distinct parts. So there's a bass line, there's some percussion, and there's like a keyboardostinato part. What we're going to do is look at all three parts and then see how we can mesh them all together and play them all on the guitar. We're going to start off with the bass line. And while it's technically easy to play, I want you to be very, very careful and attentive to the rhythm, okay? Because you need to be very, very precise about where you're placing each of these notes. So we'll start off with a little run, okay? This leads us into the intro. We're just going to do 3-5 on the top string, 3-5 on the A string. And then we're into the intro. Okay, so the intro, like this. 2 3s on your A string. 2 on your D string. 0 on your top string. Okay. The rhythm here, so we'll be breaking beats down into kind of 4 subbeats. So instead of just going 1, 2, 3, 4, or even 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, what we're going to do is 1 E and A, 2 E and A, 3 E and A, 4 E and A. So that means that there's essentially 16 places in the bar that a note can go. So we start off on 1 and. Okay, 1 and 2 E and A. 1 and 2 E and A. So this note is on 2 A. And then your final note in that bar is up here. Open E string, and that's on 3 A. So like this. 1 and 2 E and A, 3 E and A, 4. Once again. 1 and 2 E and A, 3 E and A, 4. Next bar, 1 and 2 E and A, 3. Again, 1 and 2 E and A. That's your 1st fret top string, 3rd fret D string. And then you have this little chromatic run. So you're going on the A string, 0, 1, 2, and then your open D string. So we'll play that bar all together. And this is you back to the start. So once more for that bar. Okay, so I'll play the whole thing super, super slow. So that's the bass line, done and dusted. The next thing we're going to look at is percussion, right? Percussion for this is actually quite simple, and it actually makes the bass line easier to play, in my opinion. What we're going to do is try and replicate the sound of a drum kit, essentially, or the important beats of a drum kit. So we're looking at a bass drum, and we're looking at a snare drum. Our bass drum is going to be on 1 and 3, and our snare drum will be on 2 and 4. Something like this. The count, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so we'll try and put this to the bass line. The only thing that might be technically tricky about this is that sometimes you're going to have to hit a bass note while you hit a kind of bass kick. And it's that sort of motion, right? So you're trying to pick with your thumb and slam down at the same time. It takes a little bit of time to get that technique down, but once you do, it's worth it. Thickens out that sound. Okay, so we start off. Like that, right? So I have a bass thump with the first bass note. I actually put in 2 bass thumps, but it doesn't really matter. With both of those 3s. Click on its own. This E note, then the bass drum. Once again. There I finished off with an open top string followed by a snare click. So once again, but this time I'll do it a little bit slower. Pretty much the same thing then with the second bar. Okay, all you have to do really is learn the bass line, learn this technique, bass and snare, and then just see when each of those events happens. So if a kick drum sound, your bass drum sound, happens at the same time as a bass note, or if it happens in between notes, and then the same thing with the snare, does it happen at the same time as a note, or does it happen before or after a note? The tab is super, super useful for that. Okay, so check out the tab and just take your time, learn it left to right, and it will become simple quicker than you think it will. All right, next part. This is where it gets really tricky. So we're going to try and add this keyboard ostinato part to it. So we'll have a look at what that goes like first. So the first chord is like a C, so we're going, and that's the rhythm. So it goes 1, 2, 3, 4. Then we change to an F chord, right? This is a big stretch, I know. If you did find that stretch impossible, you could just bar the bottom 2 strings on 1. It's the same chord. This doesn't sound quite as good as this. Okay, so we're changing this. But halfway through playing it, we're going to shift up here to an F7, like this. Okay, so that bar goes like this. Once more. Okay, so putting those 2 bars together, we've got this. Okay, so now it does get quite tricky, so we're trying to put that part together with our bass line and our percussion. If the keyboard ostinato falls on the same beat as a bass note, that's all right. We do what's called a pinch, so you're going to pick with your thumb and pick with your fingers at the same time, right? But sometimes that'll happen with a bass drum, right? So you have all 3 happening at the same time. So we have a bass drum, percussion, and a keyboard ostinato kind of chord happening all at the same time. So you've got to pick with your thumb, your fingers, and at the same time kind of slam your wrist down on the bridge. And that's actually how it starts, okay? The other tricky thing is that if there's a snare drum that happens at the same time as a keyboard ostinato kind of chord, and for that, some of you guys will probably be used to this technique if you've learned a bit of fingerstyle guitar before. But what you're doing is bringing your thumb down, snare technique, but at the same time trying to strum the bottom, say 2 strings for now. And I use my middle 2 fingers, so what's that? Middle and ring. So I use middle and ring just to kind of hit the bottom 2 strings while I do the click. Okay, so bar 1, I'll just go through it super, super slow and put the tab up so you can kind of follow along. Bar 1 again. Bar 2. Again, this ridiculous stretch. It's the first half of the bar. Again, if you didn't want to do that, you could get away with just kind of doing more of an F chord. Anyway, first half of the bar. Then we're going to go up here to this F7 sort of position, if you think an F7 like that. Here. Okay, and this allows us to get these bass notes in while we're holding down the chord. Once more. Okay, so putting the first half and the second half of that bar together. Once more. Alright, so see if we can put bar 1 and bar 2 together. And that's it. That's the intro part. It probably does get a little bit trickier than that in the verse and the chorus parts. There's just some kind of vocal acrobatics I've tried to get with the guitar that makes it quite hard to play. But if you master the intro, it really does make the rest of it much easier. There's really no new techniques in it aside from those. The percussive stuff is all super simple. It's the bass drum and the snare click. And it's really just about trying to get it to groove in time. And for it to groove in time, it really needs to be easy for you to play. So you need to do practice it a lot, practice with a metronome, and then eventually practice without a metronome, so you've got the beat in your head, or you can feel the beat while you're playing. Alright, well here, I hope that was useful. As I said, if you want the tab, shoot me a message and I'll send it through to you. Have a good one.